Story Master. Germain 100 couldn't be here today, as he's currently out of commission. So, for this episode, I will be... What? You are supposed to be dead.
Well, actually, you only knocked me out. And now... I'm taking back my spot, if you will.
I will return when least expected.
Sorry you all had to see that. Anyway, let's get these lights off. That's better. Anyways, I'm Ultraman 100 and welcome back to Spooktober Storytime, Volume 3, Chapter 3. It's Halloween, it's the final chapter of this year's Spooktober storybook, so I decided we're gonna read The Dead Poets Game, narrated by Count JJ, son of Germain.
The following is a brief set of instructions on how to play The Dead Poets Game. Most of you have probably never heard of this ancient phenomenon that circled around England in the late 1800s during the Industrial Revolution. This practice can still be used by certain people. But I must warn you that what you will partake in is extremely dangerous. You must first follow all instructions perfectly, or else your life will forever be endangered. Now, you might be asking yourselves, what is the Dead Poets Game? In the late 1800s, stories of ghosts and goblins were circling all throughout Northern Europe. Everybody only thought of these spirits as mere fairy tales. It was, of course, all too true, when one night, at the London Theatre, someone performed this exact game in front of a large audience. This man was a psychic who was mostly renowned for his unbelievable talents of precognition. Alexander Kingsley was his name. He mostly performed magic tricks and various other acts of illusion that even I can't figure out. One of which was when he seemingly cut off his own foot and then reattached it in only 60 seconds. Of course, I'm just getting sidetracked. With the craze of the ghosts and demons becoming famous throughout the world, Alex used this to his advantage. He was going to play a little game that he had heard of and wanted to test out if it was real or not. The items needed are a candle, 2 glasses of wine, a table, and 2 chairs. You'll see why later. Alexander heard the tales of what would happen if he played this game, and thought it would be a good idea in order to bring in profit. You see, at the time, his tricks have gotten a little stale, if you know what I mean. The idea of actually summoning a ghost on stage was the perfect idea to reel in a crowd. Soon posters and adverts were plastered all across London. Come see the mysterious ace, for tonight at 8 o'clock he will summon the undead from their peaceful slumber. Come and see for yourself at the London Theatre House. Of course, this was back when literally everyone was a gullible idiot, although nothing has really changed, now has it? At that very night, Alexander, or Ace, was going to perform the game improperly. He wasn't acquainted with the key rules that one must follow. Here are the rules. 1. You have to be alone. 2. You have to do it in a place of where someone has died. And 3. You have to take everything seriously. Alex disrespected these rules to the core, and the punishment for not following these rules are, well, you'll see later. The setup you have to follow is that you have to be in the vicinity of where someone has recently passed away. You need to place your table on the exact place in which they had died. You need to put your chair where the victim's head was pointing, and the other where the legs were. It also matters who died. It needs to be the body of a poet, hence the name. A poet can also be described as a calm and well-spoken, nice soul. So, if your friend or husband was a very humble and collected person, then you can play this game, if they died. The reason for this is because when you'll contact the spirit, it'll take the shape of a trapped soul. If you want to have a nice conversation with the spirit, you wouldn't want it to take the shape of a demon, now would you? This brings us to our first rule. Be alone. If you aren't alone, the spirit may possess the poor soul who didn't sit down in the head chair, as I call it. And trust me, it is very hard to save a soul from this fate. If the other person gets possessed, the ghost will have full control over the body. Sometimes, if it's a demon, then your friend may do unspeakable things. The same rule applies if you don't sit down in the head chair, or if you don't have the table placed right on the spot. If you're like me, at this point, you've probably predicted the fate of Alexander and his audience. But trust me when I say this. Not following the rules in which you're supposed to act in a sensible manner is the worst one of them all. And poor Alex was a 19th century magician with brightly flamboyant colors for clothes. Not following this could haunt you for the rest of your life. But the fact that Alex was breaking all of the rules was even worse. To properly play, you must lock yourself in a room, closing all blinds, and be sure to do it at night. No light must be in the room, except for the faint flickers of candlelight. 1 candle must be placed on the table. 2 wine glasses must be filled with alcohol of your choosing. This will symbolize a peace offering with the spirit, showing that you mean no harm to him or her. No form of modern technology should be inside the room. Also, you must make sure that you have no way of contacting anyone else in the outside world. To start, you must call to the spirit that you mean no harm to them. You pour their glass and raise your own to take a sip. If you've done this correctly, after lowering your glass, there will be someone sitting across from you. At this point, you must not display any signs of fear in your voice or facial expression. You must not provoke the spirit in any way. Act sensible. To start the game, you must say, "I wish to start a match." The ghost will usually nod and raise the glass. The spirit will take the appearance and personality of a deceased body of your choosing. Remember that you must treat the spirit as if it is a body in the room. If you don't, then you will be met with weird looks and eventual frustration and anger. Of course, nobody in their right mind would want to mess with a ghost. To play, you have to say what letter you want to be, A or B. To say it, you must say, "I strip you of the letter," and say the letter. If done properly, the spirit will take another sip. I should remind you that every time the entity takes a drink, you must too, for this will be your timer. When both glasses are empty, the spirit will leave. If both glasses are uneven, the spirit will not leave until you have finished. Now you may be thinking to yourself, this isn't so hard. All I need to do is finish a drink and it leaves. What's the big deal? Well, I can certainly tell you that you would want to spend as much time away from this spirit as possible. The creature is purposely trying to get you drunk so that you can reveal your deepest, darkest secrets. It can find out about your personal life, your job, your family, your relationships, etc. This is just a way so that the spirit can enter your mind and slowly dissolve it, just by choosing choice words. It can cause some people to commit suicide. Some entities have powers and abilities that we are yet to fully understand. Angering, pleasing, or agitating a spirit like this can have dire consequences. The game plays like this. Player A will ask a question, and player B will have to answer it. After the spirit answers, it will take a sip. The letters will alternate. Then you will be player B. The player will ask a question and then take a sip. You can ask any question you want. And so can he or she. You can keep alternating until you both run out of wine. When this happens, whoever is player A when the wine runs out is automatically the winner. If you win, the spirit will raise his glass and walk into the shadows. Remain seated, even after he's returned to his rightful place. Blow out the candle, turn on the lights, and exit the room. It sounds relatively easy, doesn't it? Of course, what happens when you lose the game is a whole other story. If you lose, the spirit will blow out the candle. Turning on the lights is probably the best defense mechanism against this spirit. Ghosts aren't drawn to light and often avoid it. Still, that doesn't mean you're safe. The spirit may start to follow you, haunt you, through your life. Every time you go into a dark room, you'll see it just out of the corner of your eye. Whenever you look into the mirror, you'll see it, standing right behind you. It'll stalk you and hunt you down until you finally muster up the courage to say the words, "This soul is yours. This is yours to do business with." If you say this successfully, you will black out. You will wake up in a room similar to your own, except darker and stranger. No windows or doors, just a bed. Spirit now has your soul, and it can choose to do whatever it wants with your body. Think of this strange realm as a sort of waiting room. As soon as someone else wants to play, you will be summoned and forced to play. If you lose, then you're forced back into the room, and you will have to wait again. Sounds pretty fucking easy, doesn't it? Usually, you are the only one in this dimension until you're summoned. Nobody else can enter. A year before the phenomenon had spread to England and made popular by Alex, a violent prisoner named Pere played the game. Using the dead body area of his unlucky cellmate, he had heard of the game and had heard of its effects. He thought that if he lost, he was summoned somewhere else in England, and he would be able to escape from his life imprisonment. So, locked up in his French prison, he performed the game and purposely lost, not knowing how horrible his fate actually was. He spent a whole year in his hellish prison, screaming in agony, banging on the concrete walls as he got no response from anyone or anything. He went insane. He became the very definition of a demon. He wasn't able to form sentences. He couldn't self-harm. He couldn't think straight, and all he could think was leaving that hellhole. Then, one cold November night, Alexander released the demon from his cell. With no real way of a human form, and with an overwhelming audience of bodies to possess, Pere could not control himself. He was transformed into his natural body, except he had aged exponentially. He stank of feces and urine. His clothes were tattered and worn out, and he was screaming like a rabid dog. He was foaming from the mouth. He attacked Alex and took his body. Pere had become Alex. He ran out of the theater. Crowds were running after him, some calling him a genius, others calling him a monster. Alexander automatically lost the game. He didn't follow the rules, and thus his fate was sealed. And so, if you've learned anything from this, do not take the risk of playing this game. It will ruin you, destroy you, dismantle the very fabric of your world. If you do choose to play this game, I suggest playing alone. Thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed this year's Spooktober Storytime. Anyways, I'm Ultraman Fan 100, signing off. Happy Halloween!